On Christmas Eve, I found out the billionaire who spent 28 years pretending I didn't exist had just left me his entire $2 billion foundation. He hid me my whole life. Now his will is dragging me into the family celebrating Christmas without me. The bells, the roses, the photographers, a beautiful funeral for a man who buried me alive. His wife clutches white roses like they mean something. His son, the one he claimed, holds her arm. They're crying, or performing it, I can't tell the difference anymore. I'm close enough to hear the pastor, close enough to see the casket disappear, not close enough to matter. 28 years. That's how long I was Harrison Ashworth's secret, his daughter, his shame, his little ghost. He wrote to me once a year, one Christmas card, mailed in secret, signed H. Not Dad, not Father, just H. My phone buzzes, then buzzes again. One message says I'm his heir. The other says I'm a thief. Same estate, same family. Two different versions of me.
Let me say goodbye.
You couldn't even let me say goodbye. But you left me something, didn't you? You left me a war. In the next 2 hours, you'll discover what happens when a billionaire's hidden daughter claims everything and learns the cost of finally being seen. My apartment looks the same. Funny how that works. A man dies, your father dies, and the world keeps its shape. The books on the shelf, the dishes in the rack, the desk lamp I leave on because coming home to darkness feels too much like the truth. I drop my keys on the counter, hang the camel coat on its hook, stand there for a moment in the silence. Brooklyn, November. A one-bedroom I've made impersonal on purpose. No photographs on the walls. Whose would I hang? No Christmas decorations. I stopped celebrating years ago. What's the point of a holiday designed for families when you've never been allowed to belong to one? I live like someone waiting to be evicted. Like someone who learned early that anything you love can be taken. I sit at my desk. The wood is scarred from years of other tenants, other lives. I've covered it with financial reports, audit trails, the forensic accountant's armor. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't hide you. Numbers are the only language I've ever trusted. But tonight I push the spreadsheets aside. My phone sits in front of me. Those 2 notifications still glowing. William Price, Esquire. Ashworth Foundation Legal. Inheritance and accusation, delivered in the same breath. I should deal with the subpoena first. That's the urgent threat. That's the landmine. But I don't reach for the phone. Instead, I open my desk drawer, bottom left, locked, always locked, because some things are too fragile for the light. There it is. Cream envelope. Expensive paper, the kind that costs more than my weekly groceries. Harrison Ashworth's handwriting on the front. I'd know it anywhere. I traced those letters as a child, trying to learn something about the man who couldn't be seen with me. His final Christmas card. Arrived 2 days before he died. Mailed in secret. Signed H. I've read it 40 times, maybe 50. But I read it again now. Maya. I've started this letter 100 times over the years, 1,000. I never had the courage to finish it. But I'm finishing it now because the doctors tell me I'm running out of chances to be brave. I know what I took from you. I know what I failed to give. Every birthday I should have attended. Every Christmas morning you woke up alone. Every time you had to lie about who your father was because the truth was something I made shameful. I'm leaving you what I should have given you in life. A name, a place, a legacy you're entitled to. William Price has the details. Trust him. He's the only one in that world who knows you exist. I'm sorry. That's not enough. It will never be enough. But for once, finally, I'm writing it down where someone else can see. To my daughter. Finally. Harrison. To my daughter. Finally. 28 years. That's how long it took him to write those words. 28 years of hiding me, of teaching me that my existence was something to apologize for, of mailing secret Christmas cards like I was a shameful mistress and not his child. And now he's dead, and finally is all I have left. Finally isn't good enough, but it's something. It's proof. It's the first time he put my name and his name in the same sentence without asking me to burn the letter after. I look at the phone. William Price, urgent, estate matter. The subpoena can wait. The foundation's accusation can wait. Let them think I'm scared. Let them think I'm scrambling. I'll meet their lawyer, but I'll do it on my terms. I dial. Mr. Price, this is Maya Santos. I'll come tomorrow, 10 a.m. I hang up before he can ask questions, before he can offer condolences I don't want, before he can hear the crack in my voice that I'm pretending isn't there. Tomorrow, I walk into a world that's pretended I don't exist for 28 years. I wonder if they're ready. William Price's office occupies the 42nd floor of a building I've walked past 100 times without looking up. Today, I look up. The elevator opens onto a lobby designed to intimidate. Dark wood paneling, Persian rugs older than my grandmother, oil paintings of men who look like they've never questioned their right to anything. Harrison's world. The world that was supposed to be mine. A receptionist leads me through halls that smell like leather and old money, past conference rooms where fortunes are divided, past portraits of founding partners whose grandchildren probably own half of Manhattan. And then, a door. Brass nameplate. William Price, Esquire. The man who rises to greet me is not what I expected. 60-ish, silver hair neatly combed, wire-rimmed glasses that he removes when he sees me, studying my face like he's looking for someone else in it. He's looking for Harrison. Ms. Santos. His voice is careful, practiced. The voice of a man who's spent 30 years keeping secrets. Thank you for coming. I don't shake his hand. Not yet. You knew about me. It's not a question. Price nods slowly, gestures to a chair. I've known about you since the day you were born. I was there when Harrison signed your birth certificate. I was there when he asked me to ensure your privacy. You mean my invisibility? He doesn't flinch. I mean what he asked. And what I did. A pause, then, I'm not here to apologize for him, or for myself. I'm here to execute his final wishes. He slides a folder across the desk, leather-bound, heavy, the kind of folder that changes lives. This is Harrison's last will and testament, specifically the portion concerning you. I open it, and for a moment, just a moment, I forget how to breathe. To my daughter, Maya Elena Santos, I bequeath controlling interest in the Ashworth Foundation, a 41% stake representing approximately $2 billion in assets. $2 billion. The Ashworth Foundation, the crown jewel of Harrison's empire, the organization that funds hospitals and schools and art programs, the organization that bears his name, his legacy, his family's face on every brochure. And he left it to me, the daughter who doesn't exist. I look up at Price. Eleanor has 33%. Julian has 20%. Who has the rest? Board members, minority stakeholders. But with 41%, you hold controlling interest. You can direct the foundation's mission, appoint leadership, remove it. Does Eleanor know? Price's silence is its own answer. She will. Soon. He folds his hands. The will enters probate in 72 hours. Once it's public, the family will be notified. And Ms. Santos, he leans forward. Eleanor Ashworth will fight this with everything she has. Let her. But Price isn't finished. There's a condition, a deadline. He removes his glasses again, cleaning them, not looking at me. You must prove your identity and formally claim the inheritance by December 31st. If you don't, if you miss the deadline, or if Eleanor successfully contests your claim, the stake reverts to the general estate, split among existing heirs. December 31st. 6 weeks from now. Why the deadline? Price's pause is too long. Harrison was specific. He wanted you to have time to decide, to prepare, but not enough time for Eleanor to build an airtight case. He was protecting me from her, even dead. He was trying to. I look at the will again, at Harrison's signature, at the date, 3 weeks before his death. He knew he was dying. He knew this was his last chance. Why didn't he acknowledge me when he was alive? Price is quiet for a long moment. The clock ticks. Outside, Manhattan hums with its indifferent millions. Then, carefully. Some men are only brave in death, Ms. Santos. Harrison loved you. I believe that. But he loved his comfort more, his reputation, his... He pauses. His existing family. The family that doesn't know I exist. No, they don't. Eleanor doesn't. Julian doesn't. You'll be a stranger claiming their inheritance. I stand, take the folder, hold it against my chest like armor. Then I'll be brave enough for both of us. Price watches me. Something like respect flickers in his tired eyes. Miss Santos, one more thing. He slides a business card across the desk. The subpoena you received, the fraud investigation? It's coming from Julian Ashworth's office. He's foundation director. He's been tracking financial irregularities for months. And he thinks I'm responsible. He doesn't know who you are, but he knows your name is on some documents that don't quite add up. Be careful. Julian is thorough. Julian, Harrison's son, the one he claimed, the one who got Christmas mornings and birthday parties and a seat at the table, the one who's about to learn he's not the only heir. 12 blocks south of William Price's office, in a glass tower that bears the Ashworth name in steel letters, another meeting is happening. One I'm not invited to. But I'll tell you about it anyway, because I learned later, much later, what Julian Ashworth was doing while I was holding my father's will like a weapon. He was hunting me. The Ashworth Foundation boardroom has windows on 3 sides. Central Park spreads below like a private garden. Harrison's portrait hangs on the 4th wall. Oil paint, gold frame, the face of a man who's been dead for 6 days but still watches everything. Julian sits at the head of the table, 31 years old, dark hair pushed back from a face that's been trained since childhood to hide what it's feeling. Hazel eyes that look warmer than they are, a scar through his left eyebrow, the only crack in the prep school perfection. He's reviewing files, has been for hours. Financial statements, access logs, transaction records that don't add up. His assistant stands at his elbow, nervous. We've traced the irregularities back 6 months. Someone's been accessing accounts they shouldn't, moving funds between departments in ways that are unusual. Julian doesn't look up. Unusual how? Small amounts, nothing that triggers automatic review, but over 6 months we're looking at nearly 2 million in irregular transfers. Now Julian looks up. Who has access? 17 people, but we've narrowed it to 3 with the technical knowledge to hide their tracks. A pause. One name keeps coming up. Tell me. Maya Santos, forensic accountant. She was contracted last quarter to review our books, ironically, to look for exactly this kind of irregularity. Julian's expression doesn't change, but his jaw tightens, just slightly. She found anomalies and flagged them to us. Could be she's just doing her job, or she's the one who created them. Julian takes the file, studies a photograph clipped to the inside cover. Maya Santos, 28, dark hair, dark eyes, a face he doesn't recognize. A face he would recognize, if he knew where to look. Maya's apartment. I'm still holding the leather folder from Price's office when my phone buzzes again. Ashworth Foundation Legal. Another message, more formal this time. Ms. Santos, you are hereby required to appear for deposition regarding financial irregularities documented in Case File 2847-B. Your cooperation is mandatory. Failure to comply may result in civil action. Of course. The same day Harrison's will names me his heir, his son names me a suspect. I almost admire the timing, the irony, the sheer Ashworth audacity of accusing me of stealing from a foundation I apparently own 41% of. They don't know who I am. Julian doesn't know that the woman he's investigating is his sister. Not his sister. Not by blood. Not legally. Not yet. But by December 31st, if I have my way, I'll be standing in that boardroom, looking at Harrison's portrait, taking the seat at the head of the table that should have been mine all along. Let him investigate. Let him subpoena. Let him build his little case against Maya Santos, forensic accountant. By Christmas, he'll know exactly who I am. And it won't be because of his paperwork. I pick up my phone, schedule a response. I'll be there, Monday, 2 p.m. And I'd like to speak with Julian Ashworth directly. If he wants to interrogate me, I'll make him do it to my face. I want to see the look in his eyes when he realizes he's been hunting his father's other child. Monday, 2 p.m., the 37th floor. I spent the weekend preparing for this interview like it was a final exam, reviewed every document I'd touched during my foundation contract, traced every transaction I'd flagged, built a paper trail so clean it squeaks. But there's no preparing for what happens when you walk into a room with your father's other child and pretend you're strangers. Because that's what we are. Strangers who share blood neither of us knows about yet. The foundation lobby is designed to impress. White marble, soaring ceilings, a massive installation of glass and steel that probably cost more than my apartment building. Security nods me through. I'm expected. Of course I am. I'm the suspect. An assistant meets me at the elevator bank. Young, nervous, clipboard clutched like a life preserver. Miss Santos? Mr. Ashworth will see you now. Mr. Ashworth. Not Julian. Not even his first name. I smooth my blazer. Navy. Professional. The armor I wear when I need people to underestimate me. The conference room is glass on 3 sides. Central Park in full November gray beyond the windows. A long table that could seat 20, but only 2 chairs are occupied today. And there he is. Julian Ashworth. 31 years old, dark brown hair pushed back from a face that's been sculpted by privilege but sharpened by something else. Ambition, maybe, or doubt. Hazel eyes that look warmer than they should given the circumstances. A scar through his left eyebrow that disrupts the country club perfection. He stands when I enter. Old money manners. His suit is charcoal, beautifully cut. No tie, deliberate casualness. A power move. He looks nothing like Harrison. Nothing like me. Good. That's good. Ms. Santos. His voice is professional, careful. Thank you for coming in voluntarily. I take the seat across from him. Don't smile. I didn't have much choice, did I? His eyebrows lift, just slightly. The left one, the one with the scar, rises higher. There's always a choice. Most people in your position would have sent a lawyer. I'm a forensic accountant, Mr. Ashworth. I don't hide behind lawyers when my numbers are clean. Something flickers across his face. Interest? Suspicion? Both? He opens a file. My file. My photograph clips to the inside. I recognize the corporate headshot, taken during the contract signing. You were brought in last quarter to audit our discretionary spending accounts. You found irregularities, flagged them to our internal team. He looks up. That's accurate? Yes. And you're aware that some of those irregularities have deepened since your involvement? I'm aware that someone has. Continued to manipulate those accounts. Are you suggesting I'm responsible? He doesn't answer immediately, studies me instead, those hazel eyes tracking across my face like he's reading a document he doesn't quite understand. What does he see? What part of Harrison is written in my cheekbones, my jaw, the tilt of my eyes? Does he sense the truth sleeping beneath my skin? I'm not suggesting anything, he says finally. I'm investigating. There's a difference. Is there? The silence between us stretches. Not uncomfortable, charged, electric. Something crackling beneath the surface of professional hostility. He breaks first. You know our financials better than anyone on staff. I've seen your work. It's meticulous, thorough. A pause. Almost like you've studied us. I'm thorough by nature, Mr. Ashworth. It's why I'm good at my job. And because I've been studying the Ashworths since I was old enough to know what I was missing. He leans back, arms crossed, eyes still on me. You keep looking at that portrait. I didn't realize I was. Harrison's face, watching from the fourth wall. Oil paint, gold frame. The same jaw I see in my mirror. The same mole below the lip that I've tried not to notice in my own reflection. It's hard to miss. He's everywhere in this building. He's everywhere in this city. Julian's voice has an edge now, something personal. My father was good at being seen, and at making others invisible. His eyes sharpen. What does that mean? Nothing. I meant public figures. They take up all the oxygen. It's an observation. But he's watching me differently now. The suspicion has shifted, deepened, become something more curious. You knew him. It's not a question. I knew of him. Everyone in finance did. He doesn't believe me. I can see it. But he can't prove otherwise. The interview continues for another 40 minutes. Questions about access codes, authorization protocols, chain of custody for sensitive documents. I answer everything, give him nothing to hold on to. But when I stand to leave, something happens. He stands too, extends his hand. Miss Santos, I'm sure we'll be speaking again. I take it. His grip is firm, warm. Something passes between us, Recognition? Warning? I don't let go immediately. Neither does he. I'm sure we will, Mr. Ashworth. I walk to the door, don't look back, but I feel his eyes on me the entire way. As I wait for the elevator, I hear him speak to his assistant, clear through the glass walls. Get me everything on Maya Santos, and I mean everything.
Good luck with that. The real file isn't in any database you have access to. But it will be. By December 31st, Julian Ashworth will know exactly who I am, and he'll wish he never asked. There's a difference between a mother and a woman who gave birth to you. I've been thinking about that difference since I was 12 years old, since the day I asked Grace why I couldn't use my father's last name, and she looked at me like I'd slapped her. Because we don't talk about him, mija. Because that's not our world. I used to think she was protecting me. Now I know she was protecting herself. Grace lives in a walk-up in Sunset Park, 3rd floor. Same apartment she's had for 20 years, same crucifixes on the walls, same smell of adobo and regret. I climb the stairs slowly, giving myself time to rebuild my armor. I'm going to need it. She opens the door before I can knock, like she's been waiting. Maybe she has. Mothers know when their children are coming for answers. Grace Vance, 58 years old, the same almond eyes she gave me, but hers are watery now, rimmed with worry. Gray threading through her dark hair worn in a simple ponytail, an oatmeal cardigan over a faded blouse. She looks smaller than I remember. Or maybe I've grown. Maya? Her voice is soft, hesitant. The voice of a woman who spent 30 years apologizing for existing. I saw the news about Harrison. Did you? She steps back, lets me in. The apartment is small, 1 bedroom, a kitchen that doubles as everything else. A gold locket at her throat. Empty now, but I know what it used to hold. Harrison's photo. She wore his face against her heart for 3 decades. I don't sit, neither does she. I got a letter from William Price. Her face changes, fear flooding in. Maya. Harrison left me the foundation, 41% controlling interest, $2 billion in assets. I watch her absorb each word like a blow. He acknowledged me in his will, publicly, as his daughter. Grace's hand flies to her locket, touches it, pulls away like it burns. You can't. Can't what? Claim what's mine? Finally exist without shame? They'll destroy you. Eleanor, the family. They'll take everything and leave you with nothing. I've seen what they do to threats. Like they destroyed you? Like you let them? She flinches, an old wound reopening. You don't understand. Then explain it to me, Mama. Explain why I grew up in secrets. Why every birthday card came with instructions to burn it after reading. Why I had to lie about my own father for 28 years. Grace sinks into a chair. An old woman, suddenly. All the fight drained out. And then she tells me. He offered to leave her. I heard her wrong. I must have. What? Grace's hands ring in her lap, fidgeting the way they always have. 30 years ago, when I was pregnant with you, Harrison came to me with papers, divorce papers. He said he'd leave Eleanor, marry me, give you his name. The room tilts, just slightly. Like the floor isn't where I thought it was. You're lying. I'm not. Her eyes are wet. He loved me, Maya. I know it doesn't look like it. I know what it looks like from the outside. But he did. And he wanted. If he wanted to leave her, why didn't he? Because I said no. You what? Grace's hands twist in her lap. I was scared. Eleanor is powerful. Her family, their money, their connections. I was nobody. A nurse from the Philippines with no papers, no power, nothing. Harrison said he'd protect me. But I'd seen what happened to the women who threatened that world. The harassment, the lawsuits, the way they disappear people's lives. I told him I'd rather stay hidden than spend my life fighting a war I couldn't win. You told him you'd rather raise me as a secret? Yes. I don't move, don't speak, can't. 30 years. 30 years of believing I was hidden because Harrison was ashamed, because the Ashworths were too powerful to acknowledge a mistake. But it wasn't just Harrison. It was her. She chose the shadows. She taught me to live in them. And she never told me she had another option. You let me believe it was his fault. All of it. It was easier. Easier for who? For you? Because it wasn't easier for me, Mama. Every school event he couldn't attend. Every Christmas I spent alone while he was with them. Every time I had to explain why I didn't have a father, I could have had a name, a family, a place at a table. And you gave it up because you were scared? Grace reaches for me, her hand trembling, the locket swinging at her throat. I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself, and you made me carry the cost. I turn toward the door. Can't stay. Can't breathe in this room full of her choices. I'm claiming the inheritance. I'm taking what he left me. And I'm going to do it publicly, with the name he should have given me 28 years ago. Maya. I'm done being your excuse for your choices, Mama. I'm done hiding because you wanted to hide. I don't say goodbye. Some words, once spoken, can't be taken back. But some silences are just as permanent. The Ashworth Foundation Winter Gala is, by design, the social event of December. 800 guests, black tie, the grand ballroom of the Langham Hotel transformed into a winter wonderland. Crystal chandeliers dripping with frost-white lights, ice sculptures bearing the foundation logo, a string quartet playing carols that sound expensive. Everyone who matters in Manhattan is here. Senators, CEOs, gallery owners, philanthropists whose donations buy them absolution and good press. And me, the daughter who doesn't exist, standing at the edge of everything that should have been hers. I almost didn't come. The invitation was a technicality. My name is on the foundation's donor list from a small contribution I made years ago. $50. My first paycheck as an accountant. I gave it to them as a private joke. Let me buy a seat at my father's table, even if no one knows I'm there. Tonight, no one knows I'm here either. I'm wearing black, simple, a cocktail dress I bought secondhand, hair down, minimal jewelry. I look like a junior associate crashing a party above her station, which is exactly what they'll see. I move through the room like a ghost, watching, cataloging, feeding my fury with every perfect detail. There's Eleanor Ashworth at the center of the room. Silver-white hair swept up, black gown by a designer whose name I can't afford to pronounce. Pearl earrings, diamond bracelet. She's greeting a senator like an old friend, because he probably is. These people grow up together. Summer in the Hamptons, Christmas in Aspen. Their children marry each other's children. They've never had to prove they deserve to exist. And there, by the ice sculpture, Julian. He cleans up well. Tuxedo tailored to his shoulders, hair slicked back. That scar through his eyebrow catching the light. He's talking to an older woman, donor probably, but his eyes are moving through the room, scanning,
hunting. Is he looking for me? Does he know I'm here? As I watch, someone hands him a microphone. The string quartet falls silent. The crowd turns. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian's voice fills the ballroom. Warm, polished. The voice of a man raised to own rooms like this. On behalf of the Ashworth family, thank you for joining us tonight. A pause. He looks toward Eleanor. She nods, gracious. My father believed that legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you build. Tonight we celebrate 27 years of the Foundation's work. Hospitals funded, schools built, communities lifted. 27 years. I'm 28. He started the Foundation a year before I was born. A year before he started hiding me. Julian continues. To family, to legacy, to the future we build together. I don't raise my glass. Don't have one. I'm standing at the bar, invisible, watching my father's legitimate child toast the empire that denied my existence. This is what Harrison gave them. Light, warmth, champagne and crystal and a place at the table. And me? A Christmas card once a year, mailed in secret, signed H. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. I turn. Julian is there. How did I not see him approach? He's holding 2 champagne glasses, offering one. His hazel eyes are curious, amused. He doesn't recognize me, not from the interview room. Here, in this light, in this dress, I'm just another face in the crowd. Do I? Most people at these things smile until their faces hurt. You look like you're taking notes. I take the champagne, meet his eyes. Maybe I'm exactly where I should be. Finally. The word hangs between us. Finally. He tilts his head, studying me like he did in the conference room, trying to place me. Have we met? I have one of those faces. No. His voice drops lower, more certain. You don't. Someone calls his name. Donor duty. He hands me his card, a reflexive gesture probably. Julian Ashworth, if you're ever looking for more than notes. I take it. Don't look at it. Don't look away from him. I'll keep that in mind. He rejoins the crowd, disappears into the glow of the people who claimed him. I look at the card in my hand. His name, his number, his world. The man who investigated me. The man who just offered me champagne without knowing who I am. The man who toasted family while I stood invisible at his elbow. I set the champagne down, untouched. I call Price from the sidewalk. The December air bites. My coat isn't warm enough. Nothing is warm enough tonight. He answers on the second ring. File the paperwork, tomorrow morning. I'm claiming the Foundation. A pause, then, are you certain? Once we file, there's no going back. Eleanor will let her. Let them all fight. And I want Eleanor Ashworth served before Christmas. I want her to open those papers while she's surrounded by family, by everything she thinks she's protected. I want her to know what it feels like to have your world torn open. Price's silence stretches. When he speaks, his voice is careful, respectful. I'll file first thing. The family will be notified by close of business Friday. Good. I hang up, stand in the cold, watch the gala's golden light spill through the ballroom windows. All that warmth I was never allowed to touch. To family, to legacy, to the future. Let me show you what legacy really costs. I wasn't there when Eleanor opened the envelope, but I imagined it 1,000 times in the days that followed, pictured her face when she saw my name, rehearsed her shock in my mind like a victory I could taste. I was wrong about the shock. She wasn't shocked at all.
The Ashworth estate study is a room designed for power. Dark wood paneling, first edition books no one reads, a fireplace that costs more to maintain than most people's rent. Harrison's portrait above the mantel, oil paint, gold frame, the eternal patriarch watching everything. Eleanor sits at his desk now. The desk that was his for 40 years. The desk she inherited 6 days ago, along with the widow's weeds and the performance of grief. The legal notice lies before her. Cream paper, formal letterhead. William Price's signature at the bottom. Re-estate claim, Maya Elena Santos, biological daughter of Harrison Ashworth, deceased. She reads the name. Once. Twice. Her hands don't tremble with surprise. They tremble with recognition. She's known about me for 20 years. Eleanor rises, moves to the bookshelf. Third shelf from the top, behind a false panel of Dickens' first editions, because of course the Ashworths hide their secrets behind literature. She retrieves a wooden box. Inside, a letter. Yellowed now. Folded and refolded so many times the creases have become permanent wounds in the paper. Harrison's handwriting, dated 20 years ago. Eleanor, I've done something I cannot undo. There is a child, a daughter. Her name is Maya. She's 8 years old, and she has my eyes, and I have failed her from the moment she was born. Grace Vance is her mother. You may have suspected. I don't know. I don't know what you know anymore. I'm telling you now because the guilt is killing me, and because you deserve to know what kind of man you married. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I've made arrangements for Maya's care. Trust funds, education. William Price handles everything. She will never want for money. But she will never have a name, never have a family, never have Christmas mornings or birthday parties, or a father who can look at her in public without shame. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Harrison. Eleanor read that letter 20 years ago, and she made a choice. She locked it away, kept the secret, raised Harrison's 3 legitimate children, Julian, Catherine, Michael, without ever telling them their father had another family, without ever telling me that I had siblings who might have loved me. 20 years of silence. 20 years of pretending I didn't exist. And now she reads my name on a legal document, and she doesn't feel shock. She feels the walls closing in. Eleanor's voice, when she speaks, is the voice she's been practicing for 35 years. Controlled, elegant. The voice of a woman who learned to perform strength when she felt none. Gerald, it's Eleanor Ashworth. I need you at the estate. Tonight. Yes, I'm aware of the hour. I wouldn't call if it weren't urgent. There's a woman claiming to be Harrison's daughter. I need you to destroy her. She hangs up. Doesn't wait for confirmation. Doesn't need to. Ashworth attorneys do as they're told. She pours herself a scotch. Harrison's brand. From Harrison's decanter. Everything in this room is Harrison's, even her. At the window, she watches the December darkness. Snow beginning to fall. The gardens she maintained for 35 years. The life she built on a foundation of lies she didn't tell, but chose to keep. 20 years of silence, and he does this from the grave. She turns back to the room, to Harrison's portrait above the fireplace, his painted eyes watching her as they always have, judging, expecting, demanding. For a moment, she just looks at him. The man she married, the man who gave her children, the man who loved someone else enough to make a daughter with her, and then asked Eleanor to pretend that daughter didn't exist. She walks to the portrait, reaches up, and she turns it face down, against the mantel, his eyes toward the wood. You don't get to watch this. You started it, but I'm going to finish it. She picked up her phone again, called a private investigator, someone discreet. And somewhere in her exhausted, furious, performance-weary heart, I think she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Relief. Because finally, she could stop pretending the secret didn't exist. Would you keep a secret for 20 years to protect a life you'd built? Even if that secret was a child who deserved to exist? I don't know the answer. I don't think Eleanor does either. If while Eleanor was turning Harrison's portrait to the wall, Julian was in his office, 3 floors below the boardroom, past midnight. The building empty except for security guards and the ghosts of deals that went wrong. He was hunting me. He just didn't know it yet. The file on Maya Santos has grown. 3 folders now. Background check, financial audit, employment history. Every document she's ever signed, every transaction she's ever processed. Julian sits at his desk, tie loosened, stubble shadowing his jaw, hazel eyes red from screens and sleeplessness. The scar through his left eyebrow catches the harsh office light. He's been at this for days. Since the gala. Since she walked away with his card and he couldn't shake the feeling that she was more than she claimed. There's nothing here. His investigator stands at the doorway, rumpled suit, the kind of man who makes problems disappear for the right price. Clean financials, no debt, no criminal record. Her work on the foundation audit was immaculate. Actually caught some irregularities we'd missed. Julian flips through pages. So she's either genuinely competent or smart enough to hide her tracks. There's one thing. Sealed records. Family court. Dated from when she was a child. Julian looks up. What kind of family court? Paternity, custody, something involving her father. The investigator shrugs. The seal's tight. Official channels won't budge. A sealed paternity record. For a woman who studies the Ashworth Foundation like she's preparing for war, Julian's mind works. I can almost see it. The pieces not quite fitting, but the edges starting to align. Unseal it. That's not exactly legal, Mr. Ashworth. I didn't ask if it was legal. I asked you to do it. The investigator hesitates, then nods, leaves. Julian sits alone. Maya's photo in front of him, the corporate headshot from her foundation contract. Dark hair, dark eyes, high cheekbones, a mole below her lip. He stares at it. Something nagging, something he can't name. The file arrives at 4 a.m. Email. Encrypted. Illegal as hell. Julian doesn't hesitate. Opens it. I don't know exactly what he saw. Not then. Not yet. But I know what was in that file. My birth certificate. Grace Vance listed as mother. Father. Harrison Ashworth. Every legal battle my mother fought to keep me secret. Every document proving I existed while the world was told I didn't. Julian reads it. Once. Then again. Then a third time because some truths refuse to be absorbed. His face goes white. The ruddy color drains from his cheeks like someone's opened a vein. His jaw, the same jaw he got from some unknown man, not Harrison, goes slack. No. He picks up the phone. His hands shake. The scar through his eyebrow seems sharper now, a crack in the composure he's worn his entire life. Get me William Price, now. Price answers on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. Mr. Ashworth, it's 5 in the morning. Maya Santos, tell me the truth. Tell me right now. Is she my father's daughter? And in that sigh, in that hesitation that lasted 3 seconds too long, Julian has his answer. He hangs up without another word. sits in the blue glow of his monitor, staring at Maya's photo. My photo. His half-sister's photo. The woman he offered champagne to at a party. The woman he couldn't stop thinking about. The woman he was attracted to before he knew who she was. If you discovered the person investigating you was actually your brother, would you be relieved or terrified? Julian sets down the photo, stands, walks to his window. Manhattan stretches below, glittering and indifferent. He doesn't know what to do. For the first time in his life, Julian Ashworth, heir to an empire, director of a foundation, the legitimate son, doesn't have a script. He picks up his phone, types a message. We need to talk. Coffee. Somewhere private. Tomorrow? Send. He's reaching out to me. The sister he just discovered, the woman he was hunting. I don't know what he's feeling. Betrayal? Confusion? The vertigo of realizing your whole life was a lie you didn't even know you were living? I'll find out soon enough. He chose the coffee shop carefully. Not the one near the foundation, too many people who might recognize him. Not the one near my apartment, too obvious. A neutral zone. Soho. The kind of place where architects sketch and writers pretend to work, and nobody looks at anyone else. The kind of place where you can pretend a conversation is accidental. I arrived first. Corner table, back to the wall. Old habit from a childhood spent being careful about who could see me. A latte in front of me, already cold. I'd been waiting. His text came at 6 a.m. I stared at it for an hour before responding. Coffee, somewhere private. Tomorrow? I should have said no. Every instinct screamed to say no. The man investigating me for fraud now wanted to meet privately? It was a trap. It had to be a trap. But I said yes anyway. Because I wanted to see him again. Wanted to study his face for traces of Harrison. Wanted to understand why, when he looked at me at the gala, I felt seen for the first time in my life. The door opens, cold, December air, rain on shoulders, and there he is. Julian Ashworth, 31 years old, my half-brother, though only one of us knows that for certain. He looks different than he did at the gala, rumpled, tired, dark circles under hazel eyes that seemed warmer in the ballroom light. He hasn't shaved. 2 days of stubble shadows his jaw. His peacoat is damp from the rain. He looks like a man who hasn't slept since discovering his entire life was a lie. Maya? He says my name carefully, like it might break. Julian? I don't smile. I assume this isn't about the fraud investigation. He sits across from me, signals the waiter for coffee, doesn't speak until it arrives. No, it's not about the investigation. The silence stretches. Rain streaks the window beside us. Steam rises from his cup. He's looking at me, really looking, and I can see him cataloging my features, looking for something. Looking for Harrison. Does he see what I see when I look in the mirror? The cheekbones, the mole below the lip, the eyes that never learned to trust. You keep looking at me like you're trying to solve something. He startles. Caught. Do I? You did the same thing at the gala, right before you handed me champagne. I remember. His voice drops lower. More intimate. You didn't drink it. I don't accept gifts from strangers. But I'm not a stranger anymore, am I? The question lands between us like a grenade. Both of us waiting to see who pulls the pin. Maya.
He leans forward, elbows on table, voice barely above a whisper. I found your file, the sealed records. What records? Don't. His jaw tightens. Don't pretend. I know who you are, who you really are. The world tilts. Just slightly. Just enough. And who is that? He doesn't answer immediately. Studies my face instead. And I see it. The war in his expression. The part that wants to expose me. The part that wants to protect me. The part that's still, against all reason, attracted to me. You're Harrison Ashworth's daughter. My half-sister. I should deny it. Should have a story prepared. Should run. Instead, I set down my cup. Meet his eyes. How long have you known? 20 hours. A bitter laugh. Feels like 20 years. Welcome to my world. We sit there. Two strangers who share blood. Two liars who just told one truth. He reaches across the table. Touches my hand. I should pull away. He's my brother. He's investigating me. He's the legitimate heir to everything I'm trying to claim. I don't pull away. I keep thinking I've met you before. Before the interview. Before the gala. He looks at our hands. Mine smaller, his trembling slightly. Maybe that's because part of me recognized you. Recognized something. We have the same mole. I touch my lip. Then his. No, I don't touch his. I just indicate. Below the lip, left side. Harrison had it too. He touches his own face, finding the mark he's never noticed, the thing that ties us together. What do you want, Maya? Really? Would you tell the truth to someone who could destroy you with it? If that someone was the first person who ever looked at you like you mattered. I want to exist. I want to stop being a secret. I want to walk into a room and not wonder if everyone would hate me if they knew who I really was. His hand tightens on mine. I don't hate you. You should. I'm claiming half your inheritance. I know. A pause. I read the filing. And I don't know what to do. About any of it. He looks at our hands again. But I know I don't want this to be the last time I see you. I should walk away, protect myself, protect my claim, treat him like the enemy he should be. Instead, I pick up a napkin, write my number, slide it across the table. Then see me again. He takes the napkin, folds it carefully, puts it in his pocket next to his heart. I will. We leave separately. Him first, me 5 minutes later. The protocol of people with something to hide. But as I walk into the gray December rain, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, stupid hope. The kind that gets you killed. He knows who I am. He could tell Eleanor. Could expose me. Could use it to destroy my claim before I ever see a courtroom. But he touched my hand instead, and called me his sister, and asked to see me again. I should be terrified. I'm not sure what I am. After the coffee shop, I couldn't sleep. Too much caffeine, too much Julian, too much of everything I wasn't supposed to feel. So I did what I always do when emotions threatened to drown me. I worked. My laptop glowed in the darkness of my apartment. 3 a.m., the city asleep. Just me and the ghosts I was about to unearth. Harrison Ashworth. Philanthropist. Patriarch. Beloved husband and father. Liar. Coward. And, as I was about to discover, something worse. I started with society columns, the old ones, archived in digital databases that most people don't know exist. The Ashworth name appears in New York social pages going back to the 1970s, charity galas, foundation events, ribbon cuttings at hospitals named after dead relatives. Harrison in his 20s, handsome, confident, already married to Eleanor, who stands beside him in every photo with the same frozen smile she wore at his funeral. I scroll forward, the 80s, the 90s, and I start to notice something. Women, not Eleanor, other women, appearing at Harrison's side at events Eleanor didn't attend, named in captions with phrases like foundation consultant or family friend or longtime associate. I know these phrases. They're the vocabulary of discretion, the language wealthy men use to hide the women they can't acknowledge. I pull names, cross-reference, dig deeper. Maria Castellano, 1987, assistant to Mr. Ashworth, disappeared from records in 1989. Same year a trust was established in the Cayman Islands, beneficiary unnamed. Patricia Webb, 1994, foundation liaison, left the organization abruptly in 1996. Her son's birth certificate lists father unknown, but the boy attended Exeter on a scholarship funded by an anonymous donor. Lillian Cho, 2001, art consultant, moved to London suddenly in 2003. Her daughter has Harrison's nose, Harrison's cheekbones, Harrison's mole below her lip. I stare at the screen, at the pattern I never saw because I didn't want to see it. I wasn't special. I was just the one who lasted. 3 women, at least 3, maybe more. 3 hidden relationships, 3 sets of payoffs, 3 children, possibly, erased from the Ashworth family tree before they could take root. And Grace, my mother, who lasted 30 years because she was willing to accept the shadows while the others demanded light. I pull up an old photo. Harrison and Grace, young, beautiful, the way my mother showed it to me once before locking it away again. Beside it, I place another photo. Harrison and Maria Castellano. Same year, same smile on his face, same posture, same practiced charm. He wasn't in love with my mother. He was good at this, at making women feel singular while treating them as interchangeable. If you discovered your father's love wasn't rare, wasn't special, was just a pattern he repeated with every woman foolish enough to believe him, would it change anything? Would it change everything? My phone, Julian's name on the screen. Can't stop thinking about today. Dinner tomorrow? Real dinner, not interrogation. I stare at the message, at his name, at the offer of something that feels like connection. He doesn't know what I just discovered. Doesn't know his father was a serial liar, a pattern maker, a man who manufactured intimacy like a factory produces widgets. Maybe he does know. Maybe that's why he seemed so lost at the coffee shop, so desperate to find someone who understood. I type back, yes. Delete it. Type, I shouldn't. Delete it. Type, yes. Send. Reckless, stupid, dangerous. But Julian is the only person in the world who knows who I am, who doesn't look at me like I'm invisible, who shares the same wound I carry, a father who couldn't love honestly. I close the laptop. The ghosts of Harrison's other women fade into darkness, but they're still there, watching, waiting to remind me that I was never the only one. Just the one who survived long enough to matter. December 15th. Coffee. A different shop this time, his choice, in the village, where no one from the foundation would see us. He told me about growing up in Harrison's shadow.
The way every accomplishment felt like an audition, every report card a performance review. I once brought home straight A's and a lacrosse championship in the same week, he said. You know what he told me? I shook my head. That's what Ashworths do. Not, I'm proud of you. Not, well done. Just, that's what Ashworths do. Like I was meeting a baseline, not exceeding one. I almost told him about the Christmas cards, about receiving one per year, always in secret, always signed H, always with the implicit message that my existence was something to apologize for. Instead, I said, some fathers don't know how to love honestly. He looked at me then, really looked. You say that like you know. Everyone knows someone like that. December 18th, the Union Square Holiday Market. His idea. I hate these things, he admitted as we walked past stalls selling overpriced mittens and artisanal hot chocolate. Eleanor dragged us every year when we were kids. Photo opportunities. Look like a family, she'd say, as if looking like one made it true. I bought him a ridiculous ornament, a tiny ceramic dog wearing a Santa hat. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound startled both of us. I don't think I've laughed since Harrison died, he said, turning the ornament in his fingers. Maybe that says something. About grief? About what we were grieving for. December 20th, dinner. A quiet Italian place in Brooklyn, my territory this time. He reached across the table, touched my hand. The same gesture from the coffee shop, but different now. Deliberate. Wanting. I keep waiting to feel guilty about this, he said. My breath caught. About what? Wanting to see you. Looking forward to seeing you. He traced circles on my palm. You're my half-sister. My father hid you from me for 30 years. I should be angry. I should hate you. Do you? No. His voice was almost a whisper. I think I might be falling in. Don't. I pulled my hand back. Slightly, not entirely. Don't say it. Not yet. Why not? How do you tell someone you're lying to them about something that would break the fragile thing growing between you? Because once you say it, everything changes, and I'm not ready for everything to change. He nodded slowly, accepted it, but his eyes said he'd already said it, whether the words escaped or not. While I was falling into something I couldn't name, Eleanor was building her case. The Ashworth estate, December 22nd. Her private investigator sits across from her, a folder thick with my life spread between them. Maya Elena Santos, born 1996. Mother Grace Vance, nurse, immigrant status regularized in 2003. Father listed as Harrison Ashworth on original birth certificate, though that record was sealed. Eleanor's face is stone. Sealed how? Your husband's attorneys, Price's firm. They buried it deep. What else? She's a forensic accountant, contracted with the foundation last quarter. Impressive credentials, he hesitates, and currently dating your son. What? They've been seen together. Coffee shops, restaurants, the Christmas market. My operative photographed them at an Italian place in Brooklyn 2 nights ago. He slides a photo across the desk. She's not pursuing Julian professionally, Mrs. Ashworth. This is personal. Eleanor looks at the photograph. Julian and me, hands almost touching across a restaurant table. His expression open, vulnerable, happy. She's seducing him, using him to get closer to the family. That's one interpretation. It's the only interpretation. Eleanor stands, walks to the window. Her reflection ghosts against the December darkness. She's filed a claim for half the foundation. She's dating my son. And she thinks I don't know who she is. What would you like me to do? Nothing. Yet. Let her think she's winning. Let her get comfortable. A pause. Then we'll remind her what happens to people who try to take what belongs to the Ashworths. Maya's apartment building, night, December 22nd. December 22nd, my doorstep, 11 p.m. Julian walked me home from dinner. We stood in the cold, breath visible, neither wanting to leave. I should go, he said. You should. Neither of us moved. Maya. His hand touched my face. Cold fingers, warm palm. I feel like I can tell you anything. My heart cracked. Just a little. Just enough to bleed. Me too. Lie, lie, lie. I hadn't told him about Eleanor's financial crimes. Hadn't told him what I'd discovered about Harrison's pattern. Hadn't told him that even as I fell for him, part of me was building a case to destroy his mother. He leaned in, slow, giving me time to pull away. I didn't pull away. The kiss was gentle, tentative. The kiss of two people who know they're making a mistake and are making it anyway. When we separated, he was smiling, that surprised smile I'd first seen at the Christmas market. Good night, Maya. Good night, Julian. I watched him walk to his car, watched the tail lights disappear into the December night. Then I went inside, locked the door, leaned against it. And I let myself feel it. The guilt, the longing, the absolute certainty that I was falling for a man I was about to betray. Some mistakes are made in ignorance. Some are made in arrogance. This one was made with open eyes and a breaking heart. Late night. Rain has turned to snow. December 23rd, 2 a.m. An email arrives from an address I don't recognize. No subject line, no greeting, just an attachment. Someone should know what the foundation widow really does with the money. I should have been suspicious. Anonymous tips don't arrive without motive. Someone wanted me to have this information, which meant someone wanted to use me. I opened it anyway. Financial records. 15 years of them. Transfer authorizations with Eleanor Ashworth's signature. Payments to accounts in the Caymans, Switzerland, Singapore. The geography of hidden money. And names. Recipients. Maria Castellano. The same woman I'd found in my research. $200,000 per year for 8 years. Then nothing. Patricia Webb. $150,000 annually, until 2001. Then her son's Exeter tuition paid directly. Then silence. Lillian Cho. Monthly payments to a London address, still active. And Grace Vance. My mother. $75,000 per year for 28 years. Every payment countersigned by Eleanor Ashworth. Eleanor hadn't just known about us. She'd been paying us. Systematically. Quietly. Using foundation money to silence Harrison's mistakes. The fraud Julian was investigating, the financial irregularities that brought him to my door, some of them were these payments. Eleanor's hush money. Funneled through foundation accounts to make it tax-deductible. She'd been writing us off as charitable donations. I should have been furious. Should have felt vindicated. Finally, proof that Eleanor wasn't just a passive bystander to Harrison's lies. She was an active participant, an architect of our erasure. But I felt something else. Something uglier. Power. I had Eleanor Ashworth in my hands now. Financial misconduct, misappropriation of foundation funds, conspiracy to defraud. A DA would salivate over these documents. I could destroy her. Publicly, completely. Send her to prison in the same designer clothes she wore to Harrison's funeral. I could finally make someone pay. I called Price. He answered on the fourth ring. 4 a.m. He was getting used to my hours. I have evidence. Financial misconduct. Eleanor Ashworth's been siphoning foundation money for 15 years. Payments to Harrison's mistresses, including my mother. Where did you get this? Anonymous source. Maya. His voice was careful, warning. If you use this, you know what happens. I win. No, you become the villain. A long exhale. You're not the wronged daughter anymore. You're the woman who dug through confidential files to destroy a widow. The press won't see Eleanor's crimes. They'll see your vendetta. She's been hiding us for decades, paying us to stay invisible. She'll claim she was protecting the foundation from scandal, protecting Harrison's legacy, protecting her children from their father's mistakes. He pauses. And legally, she'll have a case. Those payments could be characterized as legitimate damage control. If you held a weapon that could destroy your enemy, but would also poison everyone watching, would you use it? If becoming the villain was the only path to justice, is it still justice? I looked at the documents spread across my desk. 15 years of silence made tangible. Proof that Eleanor had known about me, about Maria, about Patricia, about Lillian, and had chosen to pay for our invisibility rather than acknowledge our existence. They made me invisible for 28 years. Maybe it's time they felt what that's like. Maya, I'll call you after Christmas. We'll discuss strategy. I hung up, stared at the snow falling past my window. Christmas Eve now. The night before the holiday I'd spent alone for most of my life. Somewhere across Manhattan, the Ashworths were decorating a tree, hanging ornaments that had names on them. Julian, Catherine, Michael. Not Maya. Never Maya. Let them have one more Christmas of pretending I don't exist. By New Year's, they'll know exactly who I am. Julian, calling, Christmas Eve, 4:30 a.m. My heart caught. Something was wrong. He wouldn't call this late unless... Julian? His voice was strange, hollow, like something had been scooped out of him. I found something. I need to see you. Tomorrow morning. It changes everything. What did you find? Not on the phone. Meet me at the Tribeca Diner, 10 a.m. Maya... A breath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness, snow falling. Evidence of Eleanor's crimes spread before me. Julian's voice echoing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What had he found that required apology? I wouldn't sleep that night. Wouldn't know peace. Wouldn't understand until tomorrow that the ground I thought I was standing on didn't exist. Some revelations arrive like dawn, gradual, gentle. Others arrive like earthquakes. Christmas morning, 10 a.m., the Tribeca Diner. The kind of place that stays open for people who have nowhere else to go. Truckers, night shift workers, the lonely, the lost. Today, two people whose lives were about to end and begin in the same breath. Julian was already there when I arrived. Corner booth, back to the wall. Same instinct I have. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him. Unshaven, dark circles like bruises, his peacoat rumpled like he'd slept in it, or hadn't slept at all. A manila folder sat on the table between us. Thick, official-looking. He didn't stand when I approached, didn't smile, just watched me with eyes that held something I couldn't name. Pity. He was looking at me with pity. Maya sitting down, coffee cup sliding toward her. "You look terrible." "I feel worse." He pushed the coffee toward me. "Drink, you're going to need it." "Julian, what did you find?" He didn't answer immediately, just sat there, fingers tracing the edge of the manila folder like it might bite him. "After I found out you were Harrison's daughter, I couldn't stop thinking." His voice was careful, measured, the voice of someone delivering news they'd rehearsed. "About you, about us, about why my father hid you for so long." And I started digging, not into you, into him, into Harrison. He looked up, those hazel eyes, exhausted, devastated, certain. I ordered DNA tests, private lab, rush job. From your coffee cup at the cafe, from my own sample, from family records we have on file. My heart stopped, actually stopped. I felt it skip, stumble, then thunder back to life. "You had no right." "I know." He cut me off, gently. "I know I didn't. But I had to know. I had to understand why Harrison would hide his own daughter for 3 decades. And? Open it." Maya's breath, I opened the folder. Lab letterhead, technical language, percentages and markers and terminology I didn't understand. But I understood the conclusion. DNA analysis indicates Subject A, Maya Santos, shares no genetic markers with reference sample, Harrison Ashworth, deceased. Probability of biological relation, 0.02%. The diner tilted. The Christmas music warped. Everything solid became liquid. That can't be right." Julian's voice came from very far away. "Keep reading." Subject B, Julian Ashworth, shares no genetic markers with reference sample, Harrison Ashworth, deceased. Probability of biological relation, 0.01%. I looked up. At Julian. At my half-brother who wasn't my half-brother. At the man who shared Harrison's name, but not his blood. Neither of us. Neither of us. He nodded slowly. I had them run it 3 times. Same result. Harrison Ashworth is not my biological father. He's not yours either. How is that possible? Julian reached into the folder, pulled out another document. Medical records, old ones, yellow with age. Harrison had a vasectomy at age 22. Some kind of, I don't know, youthful rebellion against his parents who were pressuring him to produce heirs? A bitter laugh. Then he reversed it at 28 when he married Eleanor. But the reversal failed. He was functionally infertile from age 25 onward. Which means every child he claimed, me, my siblings, you, we're all products of our mother's affairs. Harrison Ashworth had no biological children. The Ashworth bloodline is a myth. I sat there, in that diner booth, on Christmas morning, holding documents that proved I wasn't who I thought I was. 28 years of believing I was Harrison Ashworth's hidden daughter. 28 years of carrying his blood in my veins like a curse and a blessing. 28 years of wondering why he was ashamed of me, why he couldn't acknowledge me, why I wasn't good enough to claim. And none of it was real. My whole life, everything I was told, everything I believed, a lie. Julian's voice was as hollow as mine. Welcome to my world. If you discovered you weren't who you thought you were, that the identity you'd built your entire life around was someone else's fiction, would you grieve the truth or the lie? I didn't know. I still don't. Does this mean my claim is invalid? Julian shook his head slowly. I don't know. I called Price before I called you. He says Harrison's will specifically names my daughter Maya Santos, not my biological daughter. It might hold up. It might not. But what? But Eleanor doesn't know this yet. None of them do. He looked at the folder, at the truth neither of us had wanted. My mother raised 3 children she believed were Harrison's. She endured his affairs, his secrets, his lies, all for the sake of the family bloodline. And the bloodline doesn't exist. She'll destroy everything if she finds out. Or it will destroy her. I looked at Julian. Really looked. This man I'd been investigating, falling for, preparing to betray. He wasn't my brother, but he wasn't my enemy either. So, what do we do now? He reached across the table, took my hand. The same gesture as before, but different now. Not attraction, not family. Something else. We confront her. Together. Not as enemies, as fellow survivors of Harrison's lies. And then we decide what to do with the truth. We sat there for another hour, maybe 2. The coffee went cold. The diner emptied and refilled with new, lonely people seeking Christmas refuge. We didn't talk about the attraction we'd felt. Didn't talk about the kiss. Didn't talk about what we were to each other now that biology had been stripped away. We just sat. 2 strangers who shared nothing except the same wound. The same father who wasn't a father. The same lie that had shaped our entire lives. Outside, Manhattan was celebrating. Families opening presents, children tearing wrapping paper. The holiday I'd been excluded from for 28 years happening all around me, while I sat in a diner learning I'd never belonged to begin with. Harrison Ashworth wasn't my father. I'd spent my whole life trying to claim a man who had nothing to give me. Merry Christmas, Maya. Welcome to the truth. If your father hid you your whole life, but left you everything in death, would you claim it? Or let the family who never knew you existed keep their peace? Comment below. December 26th, the day after. I woke in Julian's apartment, not in his bed, on his couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like fabric softener and someone else's life. The kind of domestic detail I'd never had. Neither of us slept, not really. We'd talked until 4 a.m., reconstructing the lies that built us. Then silence. Then dawn through windows I didn't recognize. His apartment was expensive. Of course it was. Pre-war building, exposed brick, art on the walls that looked like investments. And in the corner, a Christmas tree, full-sized, decorated with ornaments that had his name on them. Julian, Catherine, Michael, the legitimate children, the ones who got trees. I don't have a tree. I've never had a tree. Funny how that detail felt like the sharpest cut. Not the DNA, not Harrison's lies, the tree. The simple evidence of belonging I'd never been allowed. He handed me coffee, black. He'd remembered from the diner. How do you feel? Like I don't know who I am. He sat on the chair across from me, unshaven, exhausted. The scar through his eyebrow looked darker in the gray morning light. That makes 2 of us. We sat there. 2 people who'd spent their lives defined by the same man, me by his absence, Julian by his presence, discovering that definition was fiction. She knew. Julian's voice was quiet, certain. Eleanor. She knew I wasn't his. She must have known for years, maybe always. And she never told me. She knew about me, too, for 20 years. Paid my mother to keep quiet, used foundation money to fund our invisibility. Julian looked at me, something hardening in his hazel eyes. Show me. I spread the evidence across his coffee table. Eleanor's financial records, the payments to Grace, the payments to Maria, Patricia, Lillian. 15 years of systematic cover-up disguised as philanthropy. Julian studied each document. His jaw tightened with every page. These accounts, he pointed. These are the irregularities I was investigating. The fraud I thought you committed. Your mother committed them. To keep your father's secrets buried. Julian stood, walked to the window. Manhattan stretched below, gray, indifferent, continuing without us. My whole life I thought I wasn't good enough. That's why Harrison looked at me the way he did. That's why nothing I accomplished seemed to matter. I thought I was failing some test I couldn't see. You weren't failing. You were just not his. He turned. Neither were you. But he chose you anyway. Chose to put you in the will. Chose to acknowledge you in death when he couldn't in life. He chose to hide me for 28 years first. Yes. Julian crossed back to me. Sat closer this time. But in the end, he chose. And Eleanor chose to keep you hidden. Chose to pay for your silence. Chose to protect a bloodline that didn't exist. If someone protects a lie for 35 years, does it matter if they believed it was true? Does intent erase the damage? I didn't have an answer. I don't think Julian did either. What do we do? Julian's question hung in the gray air. We confront her. Together. With everything. He nodded slowly. The DNA, the financial records, Harrison's infertility, all of it. Force her to see what she's been protecting, what it cost. And then? I looked at the documents spread before us, the paper trail of my erasure, the evidence that could destroy the Ashworth name, the foundation, the legacy Eleanor had spent her life maintaining. Then we decide what kind of people we want to be. Julian reached across the table, took my hand. Not romantic, not familial. Something else. Something born in wreckage. Together? Together. December 27th. William Price's office. I went alone. Some things you have to face without witnesses. Price was waiting. He looked older than he had a week ago. Like the weight of Harrison's secrets had been aging him by the day, and now, with them exposed, he could finally show it. You have more. I know you do. He didn't pretend otherwise, just gestured to a chair, to a box on his desk. Harrison's complete file, everything I was instructed to give you only after the will was read, only after you claimed. I'm claiming. I know. He pushed the box toward me. This is what he wanted you to have, and what he couldn't bear to give you while he was alive. The box was cardboard, ordinary, the kind you'd use for storage, not treasure. Inside, envelopes, dozens of them, cream-colored, sealed. Harrison's handwriting on each one. Maya, age 2. Maya, age 5. Maya, first day of school. Maya, Christmas 1998. Maya, happy birthday, sweetheart. 27 envelopes, 27 years of words he never sent. I opened the first one, age 2. The paper was yellow now, the ink faded, My darling girl, you took your first steps yesterday. Grace sent me a video. I've watched it 43 times. I wish I could have been there. I wish I could be there for everything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Someday I'll find the courage to say this to your face. Until then, I'm writing it down where only I can see. He never found the courage. He wrote it down where only he could see. For 27 years. He read them all, every one. Age 5. You lost your first tooth. I bought you a present. It's sitting in my desk at the office. I don't know how to give it to you without Eleanor finding out. Age 10. You made the honor roll. Grace told me. I cried. I don't know how to tell you I'm proud of you without explaining why I'm not there. Age 16. Happy birthday, sweetheart. You're becoming a woman. You look just like your mother. You have my eyes. I wish I could claim you. I wish I wasn't such a coward. Age 21. You graduated, top of your class. I was there, in the back, where no one could see me. I watched you walk across that stage and I thought, that's my daughter. My brilliant, beautiful daughter. And I can never tell anyone. He was there, at my graduation, hiding in the back, watching me without anyone knowing. He loved me, and he still chose to hide me every single day for 28 years. Price watched me read, didn't speak, just waited. When I looked up, his eyes were wet. Old man's tears he was too tired to hide. Why didn't he send them? Price's voice was heavy. Fear, habit, the same cowardice that kept him from acknowledging you in life. A pause. He told me once that writing the letters made him feel like a father. Even if you never read them, he was speaking to you. That's not the same thing. No, it isn't. He looked at the box. At the 27 years of unsent love. He wanted to be brave. He just wasn't. If someone loves you in secret, writes you letters every year, watches you from the shadows, funds your education without ever claiming you, is it love? Or is it the performance of love for an audience of one? I gathered the letters, put them back in the box, held 27 years of silence in my hands. He should have been braver. Yes. He should have given me what I deserved. Yes. And now I have to decide what to do with what he gave me instead. I stood, took the box, walked to the door. Price's voice stopped me. Maya, for what it's worth, I think he would have wanted you to be kinder to Eleanor than she was to you. Then he should have said so, in person, while he was alive. December 28th, the Ashworth Estate. Georgian manor rising from manicured snow. The kind of house that looks like it was built to intimidate. Stone columns, mullioned windows, a front door that weighs more than my first car. Julian's hand brushed mine as we walked up the steps. Solidarity. Fear. Both. The last time I approached this house, I was hidden behind a stone angel at the cemetery's edge. Today, I walked through the front door. The expensive silence of old money. Eleanor received us in the drawing room. She stood by the fireplace, the same fireplace where Harrison's portrait hung. She hadn't turned it face down again. Let him watch, I thought. Let him see what his lies created. 62 years old, silver white hair swept up, black cashmere, pearl earrings. Every inch the society widow, except her eyes. Her eyes looked like she hadn't slept since Christmas. Julian and Miss Santos. She pronounced my name carefully, like a diagnosis. I wondered when you'd come. Julian stepped forward. He was holding the folder, DNA results, medical records, the paper proof of Harrison's infertility. You knew.
Eleanor didn't flinch, didn't pretend to misunderstand. I knew many things, Julian. You'll have to be more specific. I'm not your biological son. Harrison wasn't my father. He set the folder on the table between them. None of us are his. We never were. Eleanor looked at the folder, at her son, at me. Something moved behind her eyes, calculation, assessment, and underneath it, something more exhausted than I expected, something almost relieved. How long have you known? 3 days. Julian's voice cracked, just slightly. You've known longer. Eleanor walked to the window, her back to us, her reflection ghosting in the December glass. I knew what I needed to know to survive. And me? You've known about me for 20 years. Harrison wrote you a letter, told you everything, and you chose silence. Eleanor turned, looked at me directly for the first time. Her face was careful, the face of a woman who'd spent 35 years controlling what others saw. But something was cracking. The performance was too heavy now, too old. You were. A reminder of everything I'd lost. Every time Harrison looked at you, in pictures, in reports from investigators, he stopped looking at me. You were proof that I wasn't enough, that I was never enough. I was a child. I didn't choose to be born. No, you didn't. Eleanor's voice was quiet, tired. And I didn't choose to marry a man who couldn't be faithful. But we're both living with the consequences. Julian moved beside me, his presence solid, united front. Mother, did you know Julian wasn't Harrison's biological son before today? Eleanor's eyes flickered. The mask slipped just for a moment. I suspected. From the beginning, Harrison was damaged. The vasectomy, the failed reversal. He told me after our honeymoon that children might not be possible. And when you got pregnant anyway? I didn't ask questions I didn't want answered. Julian's face went white, the color draining the same way it had in the diner. You knew. You knew I wasn't his. You knew Catherine and Michael weren't his. And you raised us. You let us believe. I raised you as Ashworths. Eleanor's voice hardened, defensive now, the old armor trying to reform. I gave you his name, his inheritance, his legacy, everything he would have given you if he'd been capable. Everything except the truth. Silence filled the room, the kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on everyone beneath it. Eleanor looked at us both. Julian, the son she'd claimed for 31 years, me, the daughter she'd hidden for 20. Something broke in her. I saw it happen, the crack running through her composure like a fissure in old ice. What do you want, both of you? What do you actually want? If someone protects a lie to protect their children, if they build an identity on fiction because the fiction is kinder than the truth, are they a villain? Or are they just another victim trying to survive? I looked at Julian. He looked at me. We want the truth. All of it. No more hiding. Eleanor's shoulders dropped, the last of her performance dissolving. Then sit down. Both of you. This is going to take a while. Eleanor served tea. Of course she did. Even in confession, the performance continued. Bone china, silver tray, the choreography of old money hospitality. We sat in a triangle, Julian on the settee beside me, Eleanor in the wing-back chair across, Harrison's portrait watching from above. You wanted the truth, Eleanor said. Here it is. She set down her cup. The tremor in her hands was slight but visible. 35 years of control, finally showing the cost. I knew Harrison was incapable of fathering children before our first anniversary. The doctors were explicit, but I was 26 years old,
newly married to one of the wealthiest men in New York, and the Ashworth family expected heirs. So you found another way. Eleanor's eyes flickered. Old shame, old pragmatism, old survival instincts. I made choices, discreet choices. Harrison knew. We never discussed it directly, but he knew. And he accepted Julian, Catherine, and Michael as his own, raised them, loved them, gave them his name. Julian's hand tightened on his knee. I saw the tension in his jaw, the same muscle that worked in mine when I was trying not to shatter. And when Harrison started making his own discreet choices, the affairs, the other children, I looked away, the same way he looked away from mine. A marriage built on parallel deceptions. Children born from secrets they never knew they were. An entire family, a dynasty, constructed on fiction both parents agreed never to name. Why tell us now? Eleanor looked at me, really looked, not as a threat anymore, but as something more complicated. Because you're here. Because the DNA is already done. Because in 3 days, your claim goes before the Foundation Board, and if you reveal what you know, everything Harrison built, everything I've protected for 35 years, collapses. You're not confessing. You're negotiating. A ghost of her old smile, bitter, self-aware. I'm doing both. It's possible to tell the truth and protect yourself simultaneously. She leaned forward. And it's possible to give you what you want without destroying what matters. She opened a folder, documents, legal papers, a proposal drafted by attorneys who cost more per hour than my monthly rent. What is this? Terms. Eleanor's voice was measured now, professional. For your consideration. I read. Julian read over my shoulder. $100 million, personal settlement, tax-advantaged, structured over 5 years, Foundation co-directorship, shared. Authority with Julian. Equal voice in the organization's mission. Public acknowledgement. Maya Santos, recognized as Harrison Ashworth's daughter, adopted, not biological. Full inheritance rights. The Ashworth name, if I wanted it. The price? Eleanor's eyes held mine. Destroy both DNA tests, yours and Julian's. Let the bloodline myth survive. The Ashworth name continues to mean what it's always meant. The Foundation continues its work without scandal. You're asking me to lie. I'm asking you to accept reality. Eleanor's voice hardened, the negotiator emerging beneath the penitent. The Ashworth name funds hospitals, schools, scholarship programs for children like you were, children without resources, without connections, without anyone fighting for them. Those programs exist because people believe in the Ashworth legacy. Destroy that belief, you destroy the Foundation's credibility, its funding, its mission. If a lie protects something real, if keeping a myth alive means hospitals stay open and scholarships continue, is it still wrong to perpetuate it? Julian spoke for the first time, quiet, conflicted. Mother, this isn't... You didn't grow up hungry, Julian. Eleanor's voice softened. You didn't grow up invisible. She did. A pause. Eyes on me. I'm offering her everything she wanted, on terms that protect everyone. I looked at the proposal, at Julian, at Eleanor, at Harrison's portrait watching from the wall. Everything I'd wanted. A name, a place, public acknowledgement that I existed, that I had always existed. But not as his daughter, as his adopted daughter, a fiction layered on top of fiction. I need time to think. Eleanor nodded, expected this, had probably negotiated enough to know the first response is never the final one. You have until December 30th. After that, the board meets, and I'll need your answer before I walk into that room. Maya, standing, I'll be in touch. I walked out of the drawing room, through the marble foyer, out the heavy front door into the December cold. Julian caught up with me on the steps. Maya. Not now. I can't, not now. I walked to the car, got in, let Julian drive. The proposal sat in my lap like a living thing. $100 million, a name, a seat at the table. All it cost was the truth. Apartment silence, city distant, the hum of a life lived alone. December 29th, my apartment, midnight. I stood at the window. Manhattan spread below. 1,000,000 lights, 1,000,000 lives. None of them knowing or caring that Maya Santos was deciding who to become. Harrison's letters covered my desk. 27 years of unsent love spread out like evidence at a trial. His handwriting, the same handwriting that signed my birth certificate, my trust documents, my inheritance, covering page after page with words I was never meant to read. Eleanor's proposal sat beside them. $100 million. A name. A place. Two paths. Two versions of myself. One, take the deal. Become Harrison's adopted daughter. Accept the fiction, cash the check, sit at the table I'd always wanted, knowing the chair was built on lies I'd agreed to perpetuate. Two, reject the deal. Expose everything. DNA, financial crimes, 35 years of Ashworth mythology burned to the ground. Watch the foundation collapse. Watch Eleanor prosecuted. Watch Julian's inheritance dissolve. Neither felt like victory. Both felt like loss. I picked up one of Harrison's letters, age 23, the year I graduated from business school. My darling girl, you did it. You did everything I hoped you would do, and you did it without me. I should have been braver. I should have given you what you deserved, a father who showed up, a name you didn't have to hide, a life where you existed in the light instead of the shadows. I'm sorry. I've written those words so many times they've lost their meaning, but I mean them, every time. I'm sorry. I love you, and I should have been braver. I should have been braver. He was a coward. He loved me, and he was a coward. He wrote to me every year for 27 years and never once found the courage to mail a letter. And now I was sitting in my apartment, holding his cowardice in my hands, trying to decide if I should punish everyone who survived him for the sins he committed. Julian, a text, midnight. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We go through this together or not at all. Together. I looked at the letters, at Eleanor's proposal, at my phone still glowing with Julian's promise. What did I actually want? I'd spent 28 years believing I knew the answer. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted Harrison to claim me. I wanted the Ashworths to admit I existed, to say my name in public, to give me the seat at the table they'd denied me since birth. But Harrison was dead. He couldn't acknowledge me anymore. Whatever he'd written in his will, whatever he'd written in these letters, was all I would ever get. And Eleanor's offer gave me everything I'd said I wanted. A name, a place, public recognition. So why did it feel like surrender? What do you actually want? I said it out loud. The question I'd been avoiding since the cemetery. The answer came slowly, rising from somewhere deeper than strategy. I want to stop being a secret. Not money, Not revenge, not the destruction of the Ashworth empire. Just existence. The simple right to walk into a room without wondering if everyone would hate me if they knew who I really was. That's all. That's everything. I looked at Eleanor's proposal again. $100 million to lie about who I was, to accept adopted when the truth was more complicated, to perpetuate Harrison's fiction for the sake of the Foundation's credibility. That wasn't existence. That was a new kind of hiding in plain sight. I looked at the evidence of Eleanor's crimes. 15 years of financial misconduct, hush money, cover-ups. Enough to prosecute, enough to destroy. That wasn't existence either. That was revenge wearing justice's clothes. What if the thing you spent your whole life fighting for turns out to be smaller than you imagined? What if the real prize isn't the seeing? It's the freedom to stop performing. I didn't need to destroy Eleanor. Destroying her wouldn't give me back my childhood, wouldn't make Harrison brave, wouldn't fill the empty chair at 28 Christmas tables. I didn't need to accept her lie either. Adopted wasn't the truth. The truth was more complicated than any document could contain. I needed something else. Something she hadn't offered. I called Price, 12:47 a.m. He answered anyway. He'd probably been waiting. Arrange a meeting, tomorrow, the estate. I have terms of my own. What should I tell Eleanor to expect? Tell her I'm done being a secret. But I'm also done being a weapon. Tell her I want the truth, not the version she's selling, the real one. I stood at the window. Manhattan glittered below. The same city that had watched me grow up invisible. The same city that would watch me walk into the Ashworth estate tomorrow and demand something harder than revenge. I wanted an apology. Not for cameras, not for lawyers. For me. I wanted Eleanor to say she knew I existed and chose to pretend I didn't. To say those words to my face. To acknowledge that I wasn't a problem to be managed. I was a person she had wronged. And then, only then, I wanted to decide what to do with the rest of it. The foundation, the name, the seat at the table. But first, the truth, the real one, spoken aloud in the room where Harrison's portrait watched. Tomorrow, one way or another, I would stop being a secret. Subscribe now to see how Maya chooses, and to discover what happens when the next billionaire family faces their reckoning. December 30th, the Ashworth Estate, 10 a.m. The last time I approached this house, I was hidden behind a stone angel at the cemetery's edge, invisible, uninvited, a ghost watching her father's burial. Today, I walked through the front door. Julian led me through halls I'd never seen, past oil portraits of Ashworths I'd never known, past library doors and drawing rooms, and all the spaces where a family had lived while I grew up alone in Brooklyn. And then, Harrison's study. The room I was never allowed to enter. The room where he sat for 40 years, writing letters to me he never sent. The room where Eleanor had locked away his confession 20 years ago. The study was smaller than I expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, bookshelves lined with volumes that smelled like old money and older secrets. Harrison's desk, mahogany, massive, sat before windows that overlooked the frozen garden. And above the fireplace, his portrait. Still watching, still judging. The patriarch presiding over the dismantling of his lies. Eleanor stood by the window. She'd dressed carefully,
black cashmere, pearls, the armor of a woman preparing for battle. But her face betrayed her. The exhaustion was visible now. The performance was costing too much to maintain. She looked old. For the first time since I'd seen her at the funeral, she looked all 62 of her years. "Maya?" She said my name without flinching this time. "Julian?" Julian moved to stand beside me, united front. The children Harrison had lied to, facing the woman who'd kept those lies alive. I set my bag on Harrison's desk, pulled out folders, evidence, everything. Eleanor's financial records, 15 years of payments to Harrison's mistresses, foundation money used to buy silence. I set down another folder. Harrison's medical records, the infertility, the vasectomy, the failed reversal. Another folder. DNA results, proving neither Julian nor I share Harrison's blood. And Harrison's letters. 27 years of words he wrote to me and never sent. Eleanor didn't move, just stood there, watching the evidence accumulate on her husband's desk like an autopsy of their marriage. "I could destroy you with this." Her voice was barely audible. "I know. I could take it to the board, to the press, to the DA. I could watch the foundation collapse, watch you prosecuted, watch everything Harrison built burn to the ground." "Then why haven't you?" I looked at her, at the woman who had hidden me for 20 years, who had paid my mother to keep me secret, who had raised Julian knowing he wasn't Harrison's son and never told him. Because I realized something. Burning down your house doesn't build mine. I slid the evidence back into folders, closed them, set them aside. "I don't want destruction, Eleanor. I never did." "What do you do with a weapon you have every right to use, when using it would make you the thing you hated?" "I want truth. Not your version of it, not Harrison's version, the real one." I stepped closer to her, around the desk, into her space. "I want an apology. Not for cameras, not for lawyers, not for the board, for me. I want you to say, to my face, that you knew I existed, that you knew for 20 years, and that you chose to pretend I didn't." Her mask cracked. I saw it happen, the final fracture running through 35 years of performance. "And if I do?" "Then we find a way forward. Foundation leadership shared with Julian. Public acknowledgement as Harrison's daughter, not adopted, not fictional, real. The DNA stays private. The financial records stay sealed. We bury Harrison's secrets with his bones. But only if the truth comes first." Eleanor looked at me, at Julian, at her husband's portrait watching from the wall. And something in her, something she'd been holding for 35 years, finally broke. "Sit down, both of you." We sat. Eleanor sat in the chair across from Harrison's desk, the chair she must have sat in 1,000 times during their marriage, waiting for him, watching him work, performing the role of devoted wife. Now she sat in it like a woman at confession, head slightly bowed, hands folded, the pearls at her throat catching firelight. "I've been performing for 35 years. Her voice was quiet. Not the elegant alto I'd heard at the gala, at the press events, at every public appearance. This voice was tired, raw, real. Perfect wife, perfect mother, perfect philanthropist. All of it. Performance. Julian shifted beside me, his jaw tight, his hands clenched on the chair arms. Eleanor continued, looking at me now, really looking. "I knew about you. Harrison wrote me a letter, 20 years ago." She paused, swallowed. "I read it, and I locked it away, and I pretended you didn't exist." "Mother." Eleanor raised her hand, silencing Julian.
not finished. Not to protect you. Not to protect the family. Not even to protect the foundation. To protect myself. She stood, slowly, crossed the study toward me. An old woman now, the silver-white hair catching firelight, the lines on her face visible in this harsh winter light. The woman who had spent 35 years building a life on silence and secret payments. Because if you existed, if I admitted you existed, then my marriage was a lie. My children weren't who I thought they were. My whole life was a stage set. And I was the only one who didn't know the script. She stopped in front of me, close enough to touch. The first time she'd ever been this close. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air, simple, inadequate. The first honest words between us in 20 years of my existence. I should have. She stopped, started again. I knew you existed, and I pretended you didn't. Because facing you meant facing everything I'd wasted. I looked at her, at this woman who had been my enemy, my obstacle, the keeper of the secrets that had shaped my life. And I saw something I didn't expect. 35 years of performance. 35 years of pretending her husband loved her, her children were her blood, her life was the fairy tale she'd signed up for. She was a prisoner too. Different walls than mine, but walls. When someone apologizes for something that can't be undone, when the words are genuine but the damage is permanent, what do you do with that? What do any of us do with that? It's not enough. Eleanor nodded, tears forming but not falling. The same control I recognized in myself. I know. It's never going to be enough. I know that too. I looked at her, at the tears she wouldn't let fall, at the 35 years of performance finally crumbling. But it's the first honest thing you've ever said to me. So it's a start. Not forgiveness. I didn't have forgiveness to give. Maybe I never would. But it was something. A beginning where there had only been silence. A first step on ground that had never existed before. Eleanor reached out, touched my hand, just briefly. The first time she'd ever touched me. Thank you. I didn't say you're welcome. Some things are too complicated for politeness. Julian joined us. The three of us standing in Harrison's study in the wreckage of his lies, trying to figure out what came next. The board meets tomorrow. Eleanor nodded, composing herself. The performance skills returning, but different now, functional, not fraudulent. I'll make the announcement myself. Harrison's daughter, Maya Santos, shared leadership with Julian. Full acknowledgement. No adopted. No fiction. No more secrets. December 31st, New Year's Eve, 3 p.m. The Ashworth Foundation headquarters. Press room. Cameras. Journalists. The Manhattan elite arranged in rows like witnesses at a sentencing. I stood in the wings, waiting. The dress I'd chosen was simple, black, elegant, professional. Nothing showy. I didn't want to perform. I just wanted to exist. Julian found me behind the curtain. His hand brushed mine. Ready? I've been ready for 28 years. He squeezed my hand, said nothing else. Some moments don't need words. Eleanor walked to the podium. Silver white hair, black suit, pearls. The public face restored, but different now. Knowing what I knew, knowing what she'd confessed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Her voice carried across the room, clear,
practiced, but I could hear the tremor beneath, the weight of what she was about to say. The Ashworth Foundation has always been about legacy, about what we build, what we leave behind. She paused. And sometimes about what we should have acknowledged long ago. The room shifted, journalists sensing something, cameras focusing. It is my privilege to announce a new era of leadership for the Foundation. Shared directorship between my son, Julian Ashworth. She gestured toward Julian, now moving to take his place. And Harrison Ashworth's daughter, Maya Santos. The room erupted. Questions shouted, flashes blinding, the word daughter ricocheting off walls. This was the moment. 28 years of hiding, 28 years of silence, and now... Miss Santos? I stepped forward, into the light, onto the stage, before the cameras. For the first time in my life, I was seen. A journalist in the front row, pen poised. Miss Santos, did you know Harrison Ashworth your entire life? I looked at him, at the cameras, at the room full of strangers who would write about this moment, debate this moment, forget this moment by next week. I knew of him, but he didn't let the world know of me. Until now. The press conference continued. Questions about transition, about the Foundation's direction, about my qualifications, my background, my surprise appearance. I answered them, professional, composed, the forensic accountant's armor holding. But inside, somewhere beneath the performance, something was shifting. I wasn't hiding anymore, wasn't watching from behind stone angels, wasn't waiting for permission to exist. I was just there, visible, real. When you've spent your whole life fighting to be seen, what do you do once you are? Who are you when hiding is no longer your defining feature? I didn't know. I still don't. But I was going to find out. After, in the green room, just Julian and me. He handed me water. I drank without tasting it. How does it feel? I thought about the question, about the 28 years that led to this moment, about the cemetery where I'd watched my father's funeral from the shadows, about Harrison's unsent letters, about Eleanor's inadequate apology, about everything that had brought me here. Like I've been holding my breath for 28 years. And I finally exhaled. Julian took my hand. Not romantic, something else now. Something forged in wreckage. What now? Now we find out who we are, without his shadow. 1 year later. December. My apartment. The same Brooklyn one-bedroom, same scarred desk, same window overlooking streets I've walked for years. But something has changed. There's a tree in the corner. Small, just tall enough to brush the ceiling. I picked it out myself, walked into a lot on Atlantic Avenue 3 weeks ago, spent 20 minutes choosing between trees that all looked the same, and carried this one home on my shoulder. My first. I decorated it simply. White lights, a few glass ornaments, nothing elaborate, nothing performing wealth I didn't grow up with. But one ornament is different. Crystal, personalized, Maya etched in elegant script. A gift from Julian. Arrived last week with a card. Every Ashworth has one. Now, so do you. J. I hung it on the highest branch, where it catches the evening light. I'm sitting at my desk now, 3 letters spread before me. The first, Harrison's confession, the unsent letter he finally mailed, the one that started all of this. To my daughter, finally. I've read it 100 times, The words don't change, the ache doesn't fade. But it doesn't cut the way it used to. He loved me. He was a coward. Both things are true. I've stopped trying to reconcile them. The second, Julian. Maya. The Foundation Board approved the scholarship program this morning. Full funding. We're calling it what you wanted, the Santos Ashworth Fund for Hidden Children. I know you're still deciding about Christmas Eve. No pressure. But the invitation stands. Real family this time. Whatever that means for people like us. Whatever you decide, I'm grateful. For everything. Julian. I set down his letter. Look at the tree. At the ornament with my name. Real family. Whatever that means. I pick up my pen. Start writing back. Yes, I think. Yes, I'll come. The third letter sits beside the others, unopened. Grace's handwriting. My mother's careful script. Postmarked from California, where she moved 6 months ago. I haven't opened it. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Some doors stay closed because opening them won't give you what you need, only what you lost. If you could go back and have the childhood you deserved, the father who showed up, the mother who didn't hide you, the name you were born to carry, would the person you became still exist? I don't know. Some questions don't have answers, only acceptance. I look around my apartment, at the tree glowing in the corner, at the letters on my desk, at the window where snow is starting to fall. 1 year ago, I stood in a cemetery watching my father's funeral from behind a stone angel. Hidden, invisible, a secret even in death. Now I sit in a room that's mine, with a tree I chose, with a name the world knows. Maya Santos, Harrison Ashworth's daughter. Not adopted, not fictional, real. I used to think acknowledgement meant victory, that being seen meant winning. But the truth is quieter than that. I'm not Harrison's secret anymore. I'm not Eleanor's ghost. I'm not my mother's excuse. I'm just Maya. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. I finish Julian's letter, fold it, set it aside. Look at Grace's unopened envelope. Let it sit. Look at the tree, at the ornament catching light. I'm alone in this apartment, alone on this winter night, alone with the letters and the lights and the snow. But this is different. This is a aloneness I chose. And that difference, paper thin but infinite, is the only victory that matters. I used to measure my worth by what Harrison Ashworth denied me. The dinners I wasn't invited to, the holidays I spent alone, the name I couldn't carry. Every Christmas morning I would wake up and wonder what they were doing. The family that didn't know I existed, the father who wouldn't claim me. I built a life around that absence, became someone defined by what she lacked. But inheritance isn't what they leave you. It's what you choose to carry. I buried his secrets with his bones. I kept only what matters. The truth that I exist. That I always existed. That his shame was never mine to wear. Harrison loved me, and he was too afraid to show it. Both things are true. I've stopped trying to choose between them. Eleanor and I will never be family, but we're no longer enemies. Some truths are bridges, others are just clearings, space where something else can grow. Julian writes to me now, real letters, the kind you have to mean. We're learning what it looks like to be people,
instead of heirs. And my mother, Grace, she sent a letter too. I haven't opened it yet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Some doors stay closed because opening them won't give you what you need, only what you lost. This Christmas, I bought myself a tree, small, just right. My first. I hung one ornament, crystal, my name. A gift from Julian. It catches the light in the evening. And every time I see it, I remember, I'm not hidden anymore. The opposite of being hidden isn't being celebrated. It's being present, being willing to exist in spaces where no one is performing for you, and no one is hiding you, and you are simply, quietly, there. This is American Billionaire Tales, where fortune meets fate. I'm Michael, and sometimes fate gives us exactly what we asked for, wrapped in everything we never expected to lose. Next time on American Billionaire Tales. 2 women, 1 billionaire, and a secret they both share, but only one of them knows it. When his mistress threatens everything, his wife must choose: protect her family's lie or expose her own.